I'm Christopher Smith with Media Trust. It's a beautiful day here in Austin, Texas, and we're here for South by Southwest. This is Relevantly Speaking. Hey, it's Christopher, and we're in the Frog Austin studio here as part of South by Southwest. We're sitting with the creative director from Frog San Francisco. David, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Thanks so much for talking with us. One of the things that we see within social media, a lot of people talk about the strategies that they use for putting their brand out in the market space. We'd like to get a different perspective from you, however, being a creative director and working with products and campaigns for very marquee clients. Frog has just a tremendous roster of clients. Maybe give us a little bit of background on what you guys are doing today.
Sure. So Frog is mainly working in three areas. We work on industrial design, so hardware. We work on digital media design, software. And then we work on kind of the innovation strategies that sort of combine hardware and software. And that could talk about kind of product ecosystems, environmental retail plays, and just the way that the entire consumer experience is touched by basically intentional design. So a lot of times our clients, they'll sort of design things from a process engineering perspective or product marketers, and no one's really thinking about how all the parts kind of come together. So what Frog Design is really doing is kind of bringing all those people to the table and looking at what consumers are actually asking for, the sort of latent needs, and then bringing that all together in sort of a systems design perspective. And that can actually be a piece of hardware, a piece of software, or a whole package.
Now, you guys are really famous for your kind of convergent design methodology. So you are taking someone from brand, someone from ID, someone from interactive, bringing them on the same team. Is there a project that you can talk about with us? It's something that you found was very successful in the market, maybe even kind of disruptive in the market space?
Yeah, sure. Actually, one good example that actually focuses more on the brand and software side, not so much the hardware, which we are known for as well, but is Wallop, and it's a social media site, actually down in San Francisco is where they're based. And they recognized that with MySpace and Facebook, you kind of had these polar opposites where Facebook is sort of this austere, minimal design and affords a lot of expression, but it doesn't really bring out the sort of natural character of the individual, right? You sort of become homogenized with the experience. And then you have MySpace, which of course is this cacophony of expression. And there's sort of somewhere in between that they were looking for. And so we helped them develop a Flash application that is the actual site experience itself, right? And what you can do basically is it provides a very rich platform for self-expression, but does it in a design language that really kind of normalizes or unifies the actual look and feel. So you're not moving from one awful to another awful website. No offense to the MySpace people. But what's really cool about Wallop is the integration of offline and online contacts. So a lot of social networks either try to just take the people that you know in the real world and kind of continue their conversation in the online, or conversely introduce you to people online. And what's nice about Wallop is that there's a lot of parties and events they throw, sort of bringing celebrities into that mix all around the U.S. And then the online component is very much kind of connecting with those parties, those scenes that you were a part of. And so there's this, again, this sort of environmental software, and then there was the whole brand side of Wallop and developing what that was in that space, and bringing that all together into one product experience, this sort of online Wallop social networking site, but really using social media itself, people's sort of photos and the chats and everything they're doing in the offline and online to kind of bring together a larger story about what it is, how they're living.
One of the kind of underlying threads of like a theme that we've been seeing and talking to a bunch of different companies this week is the ability for user-generated content, again, to kind of go out into additional market spaces and have different meanings and different relationships with audiences, band audiences or a photographic community, things like that. So it sounds like Wallop is going to be playing within that same type of meme there.
Yeah, it does. It very much does play into that same space. And I think what we're seeing is the traditional forms of content, like photos, video, right? Basic things that we play with ourselves as consumers. The audience that's gravitating towards these social tools are creating entirely new forms of media themselves, right? And whether that's interactive games or interactive applications, things like the token system, right, and points that you see, even actions themselves like pokes, right, and posting to walls. Those have actually like a digital media currency to them that is the same level as the currency we understand in photo and video of how we trade those things back and forth. They're just much more interactive, and you do see a younger audience really adopting that. But in time, I think we all know how this goes, that more and more of us will really get exposed to that and begin to see the value that those kinds of media have over the more traditional, almost basic media types.
One of the problems that I've always had as a creative director is, you have a very interesting vision of an opportunity, and at some point you have to ask your customer to take that risk in order to, see that vision come true. You have this big belief in something, and the customer typically, just doesn't get it yet because they're not playing in the same space as you are from the day to day, and that's actually why they've hired you, is to be able to identify those type of risks.
Yeah.
How do you go about doing that, especially within the social media space? How do you get them to adopt kind of your vision?
Yeah, and that touches on innovation and disruption, right? And basically, how do you educate a client to sort of see the world from your perspective? Because one thing that doesn't work very well, but is often used by ad agencies and other types, is just say no. Just keep telling them no, 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 my vision persists. And clients apparently aren't too amenable to that idea. So instead, what it really is about kind of holding their hand, right, and taking them through the process of discovery that you're going under with your team, and basically teaching them through the findings that you're generating why you can build the case rationally for that decision. And that's kind of a paradox, right? To the idea that you can build a case for disruption, let's say. But the truth is you can. You can actually point to market conditions and what's happening, whether it's competitive or analogous, things that are happening in another space that they aren't competing with. Right. But what's happening there can actually be applied to what they're doing. And so we find a lot of times that analogy like that can actually go a long way towards convincing a client that if they can see themselves as like another space and what's just happened, like let's say the music industry and the disruptions going on there, that if they're in the film space, clearly they can sort of make that analogy. But even if they're in the food space, they can see disruption happening. And so if you try to do it by analogy, then clients feel a whole lot more comfortable understanding the process that they're going under to get to that disruptive play or that innovative play. But at a tactical level, most of it really is about kind of presentation, right, and framing, and trying to describe the problem and then your solution in that sort of justified way. And prototypes help a lot in that, right, being able to sort of get the look and the feel of what that end user experience is like. But also relationship building, right? I mean, just basically establishing that kind of understanding with your client.
So what do you see on the horizon? What are we missing? What is Frog and Frog's customers trying to solve here in the immediate horizon?
So I think there is a disruption going on itself inside the designer's sort of world. And in large part, design and the authority that the design was given is sort of a post-World War II kind of mentality, right? There are people who understand how to use the tools, and so they basically have the authority of what the tool makes. And the internet and networking in general, social media as well, has played a very big part in sort of fragmenting that and almost dissolving that authority. And as designers like ourselves, we need to basically be aware of that. And so what we're seeing happen is a lot more participatory design with both our end users and our client. We're bringing them into the actual process of design so that we're not saying the authority rests just in us because we know how to use the tools, but it actually rests in you, the people who are going to be benefiting from these tools. And so I think that structure, that change, is very difficult for certain design agencies and studios to accept. But what we've found in recent work is that by involving the user, not so much from studying them, but asking them to actually participate, changes the entirety of how the project is constructed and also the end product itself.
Well, I know you're really busy out here in Austin, just visiting from your studio in San Francisco. Thanks so much for taking time with us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no worries. From the Frog Studios in Austin, this is Relevantly Speaking.
Sometimes when I think about life, I feel out of rhythm. I feel out of rhythm. Feet step non-stop until your last breath. What are we really giving? What are we really giving? When we deal with what we have.